You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 7th of August 2025 on Monocle Radio. The Briefing in association with Addis. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, coming to you live from Studio 1 here at Midori House in London. I'm Andrew Muller. Coming up on today's programme, Presidents Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin to meet as early as next week, but will President Volodymyr Zelensky be invited? Later in the show, Asia's efforts to navigate Trump's new tariff regime. Also ahead, reflections on an increasingly constricted media environment.
Freedom of media, safety of journalists are the proverbial canaries in the coal mine of democracy. If we see pressures against media, we should understand that there's pressure against democracy and we're in trouble.
And come on, at least it's not the German jazz charts or whatever. It could be worse. Just get through it and then we can have lunch. I've read that out loud again, haven't I?
Good to see you as well, Andrew. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco, and on today's Global Countdown, it's truly global, from K-pop demon hunters to churchy ballads.
What could go wrong? That's all coming up right here on The Briefing on Monocle Radio. And welcome to today's edition of The Briefing with me, Andrew Muller. An aide to Russian President Vladimir Putin has suggested that his boss could meet with US President Donald Trump as early as next week. Precise date and location to be confirmed. The announcement comes after the latest visit to Moscow by US envoy Steve Witkoff, at which apparently he floated the idea of a trilateral summit, also including President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine. Zelensky has long maintained an open offer to meet President Putin, in which Putin has yet to show much interest. Natasha Lindstadt, a professor of government at the University of Essex, joins us now. Natasha, first of all, would it be over-optimistic to expect anything much to come of a meeting between Trump and Putin?
I think we can't expect much because Putin has been stringing particular Trump along for a while now, at times getting on Trump's nerves, but he pretends to be interested in peace or some kind of ceasefire, but then offers absolutely nothing. I mean, what the U.S. administration had said, you have Trump, who was saying very optimistically that there was a lot of progress being made, but this Department of State had said, well, I don't want to be too optimistic. What they did think is they had a better understanding of what Putin wanted and what the terms were to end the war. But Putin may say something completely different. And when in reality, Russia under Putin wants to control all of Ukraine. And normally when you want to start negotiations, a ceasefire is in place before the negotiations start. We're just trying to get Putin to even agree to a meeting, let alone a ceasefire.
So on that subject of Putin getting on Trump's nerves, as you put it, it has been noticeable in recent weeks that Trump's attitude has seemed to become slightly more favourable to Ukraine, slightly less so to Russia. Is this then just going to be Putin trying to get Trump back on side?
I mean, that's a really good point, and I think that's most likely what is happening. Because there has been a shift, because instead of echoing exactly Russian talking points, you've seen Trump shift towards the Ukrainians, both verbally and promising to support Ukraine militarily, and also issuing this executive order that he would impose additional 25% tariffs on Indian goods because of India's continuing import of Russian oil. So he's been ramping up some of the pressure on Russia. You see a bigger role for Keith Kellogg, again, the special envoy, U.S. special envoy to Ukraine, where he seemed to be sidelined for a while there, and he seems to be playing a more prominent role. And he's a very pro-Ukrainian individual within the Trump administration. So I think that you're right to point out Putin's probably just dangling this in hopes to get Trump and his administration more on his side.
Do you think there actually is any likelihood that Putin could be persuaded to sit at the same table with President Zelensky? It does seem hard to imagine where Putin would see the upside in that.
Right. I mean, I can't imagine that's going to happen. That's what Trump Trump's administration had said could happen, that they're going to meet first with Putin, then he'll meet separately with Zelensky, and then all three of them would meet. But I think that you're going to see some way Russia will back out of this. I mean, they had suggested meeting in Istanbul, and then Putin, even though it was Putin's suggestion, he didn't even bother to show up. So I think he's just stringing everybody along.
It is noticeable that Russian markets are up by nearly 5% today on news of this meeting. Does that maybe suggest that the economic pressures are beginning to tell on Russia and on Putin in particular at all? I mean, Russia has been re-engineering its economy over the last 3 years to put it on a more or less total war footing, but presumably not even Russia can do that forever.
Right. I mean, they have a war economy. They've restructured their economy, and they've weathered some of the difficult storms that have come with economic sanctions. And sanctions have been in place since 2014, which made it more difficult for the Russian economy to grow. I mean, it definitely put a squeeze on Russian banks and made things more difficult. Things are more expensive, of course. But the Russian economy, as has been mentioned, it's just been structured around building up its war machine. But there will come a point that this just becomes too difficult. It just takes time. That's the problem. I mean, we're still really in the early years of this sanction regime that's been applied on Russia. And we've seen with other cases, to have an effect, it does tend to take a lot of time. If you have such a big economy such as Russia that is so rich in natural resources like oil and gas.
I mean, just finally, another factor possibly underpinning this is President Trump's morbid obsession with the idea of winning a Nobel Peace Prize. He's talked about himself repeatedly as a peacemaker, both in conflicts he claims to have brought to a close and in conflicts he would like to bring to a close, not just in Ukraine, but in Gaza. Given his anxiety to be seen as such, should Ukrainian listeners be optimistic or nervous about the prospect of him coming to some sort of terms with President Putin?
Well, I would think they should be more nervous if they are not in agreement with what some of these terms are. I mean, what I think it's looking like is he has supported Russia's territorial claims to the eastern part of Ukraine and to Crimea. And that might not be palatable to many Ukrainians. I mean, polling results show there's a wide range of different opinions in Ukraine on how much territory they're willing to give up. But that is likely to be the conditions that Putin would agree to, which if Trump is really obsessed with getting this Nobel Peace Prize, he might try to strong-arm Ukraine to accepting this peace. Thus far, Zelensky has not taken to the pressure, but it's very difficult to get any kind of peace with Russia because it doesn't have any interest in peace. So I think this quest for a Nobel Peace Prize on the Russian front will be elusive for Trump.
Natasha Lindstadt, thank you for joining us. That was Natasha Lindstadt, Professor of Government at the University of Essex. You are listening to The Briefing. Here's Laura Kramer with the day's other headlines.
Thanks, Andrew. U.S. tariffs have come into effect today on 90 countries. Products from the EU, Japan, and South Korea will be taxed at 15%, while imports from Taiwan, Vietnam, and Bangladesh will be taxed at 20%. President Donald Trump reacted by declaring that billions of dollars are now flowing into the U.S. Vietnam's biggest budget carrier, Vietjet, says it will hire more than 5,000 new staff in Thailand as it ramps up flights across Asia. The airline plans new routes this year to cities in Japan, South Korea, and India. Meanwhile, Thailand is boosting airport capacity to draw more tourists as Vietjet moves to grab a bigger share of the growing market. And Starbucks Korea will stop customers from working or studying for long hours in its cafes. New rules ban excessive use of personal equipment and leaving belongings on tables for too long. Staff will ask customers to move if others need seats. Those are the day's headlines. Back to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Laura. You are listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. As of right now, dozens of the United States trading partners are attempting to grasp the consequences of President Donald Trump's somewhat arbitrary and whimsical range of new tariffs. The impact is being felt perhaps especially across Asia, where Japan and South Korea now face base tariffs of 15%, and India has been clobbered with another 25% on top of 25%, punishment for continuing to buy oil from Russia. There there is better news for Taiwan, whose Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, the world's largest producer of the chips which power uncountable electronic devices. They have been exempted from the 100% tariffs Trump has imposed on imported computer chips. Well, I'm joined now by Peter Landers, Asia Business and Finance Editor at the Wall Street Journal, and by William Yang, Senior Northeast Asia Analyst for the International Crisis Group. Peter, first of all, hard to avoid noticing that Asian markets are mostly actually up today. Has everybody already priced this in?
I think they have, and in fact, some of the tariff rates that President Trump has imposed were not quite as bad as expected. For example, Toyota said today that they expect the tariff hit on operating profit to be about $9 billion, but this is a company that makes tens of billions of dollars in profit each year, so it's definitely a hit, but it's not something that is going to bring the company under.
And William, to bring you in, the shoe that has not quite dropped yet is the China one. Do we see similar, I guess, philosophical tendencies there? We are waiting to see whether there will be some sort of agreement between Beijing and Washington, or whether the truce will be extended or not. But has China and Chinese companies already made arrangements to absorb whatever blow may be coming?
Yes, I think the Chinese government has in fact already started preparing all its businesses to brace for the potential unpredictability that might come with this extended period of trade negotiation. And I think based on other countries' experiences, the Chinese is definitely going to expect a very fluid process because, as we see in the case of India, for example, the President Trump himself suddenly decided to impose an additional 25% of tariff. And the Chinese, in fact, is facing potential threats similar to the additional tariff that India is facing because they are also a big importer of Russian oil. And we know that that is a very major sticking point in the decision that the U.S. is trying to pressure the Indians. And so far, they have not done so to the Chinese. But the latest development is that the Trump administration seems to deciding that they're going to push forward, pressing Beijing on this point, but the Chinese government has already come out and declared that the Chinese and the Russians are going to continue to work together and nothing is going to separate them.
Just to follow that up, William, is there any amount of Chinese thinking in particular when it comes to the US of thinking, well, America needs us more than we need them?
I think the consideration in Beijing at this point remains very fluid. They know that at least one of the biggest leverage and weapon that they hold right now is the control of export of rare earth minerals because their ability to suspend or put a lot of control over the export of that has already created a big shockwave across major defense industries in the U.S. and that has also shown to be quite powerful weapon that they can use against the U.S. Against the high-tech industries. But I think at the same time they're also wary of the U.S. control of the advanced semiconductor chips. And while the Trump administration so far has lifted some of the export bans on certain chips that the Chinese are seeking from NVIDIA, but that also doesn't mean that the U.S. won't reverse back and decide to use that as a pinpoint when they felt like the negotiation is not going forward as they want.
On which subject, Peter, let's look in more detail at the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC. Why has Trump decided it is such a special case?
Well, they are investing tens of billions of dollars in U.S. production, and that goes back to the Biden administration. That's one Biden policy that Trump has actually continued, encouraging semiconductor manufacturing in the United States. So he hasn't really given a lot of details about how this is supposed to work. He says that there will be 100% tariff on imported semiconductors, but if you're investing a lot in the United States or plan to invest a lot, you'll be exempt. The details remain to be decided, but certainly TSMC, as a huge investor, mainly in the state of Arizona, but also elsewhere, they would be eligible for any exemption that Trump would apply.
And just finally, William, to come back to you, there are reports from Taipei of 3 people being arrested in Taiwan on suspicion of spying on TSMC. It's not It's not clear, rather, who they're accused of spying on behalf of, though I think we can probably take a wild guess. But is this one of those dog bites man stories? Would it actually be weirder if people weren't spying on TSMC?
Yeah, I think this is definitely proof that Taiwan is facing a lot of different threats coming from, trying to steal, I think, intelligence or trade secrets that it is known for. And especially it's a very important leverage that it has on the global stage, not only just in the commercial world, but also in geopolitical sense. So I think the government immediately take very quick action to adopt the rules under the 2002 National Security Act to go after these individuals. And I think it's also concerning that the collaboration, with among these accused individuals, in fact, goes beyond the TSMC. The TSMC's biggest partner in Japan just today came out to confirm that they fired one of their employees who also previously worked at TSMC. And we know that 2 of the accused worked on the unit that is the 2 nanometer team, and that is supposed to go into mass production this year. So I think this is definitely going to be viewed as a very important national security case going forward, and it will have a lot of implication when it comes to how Taiwan decides to further strengthen its capability to counter these economic espionage or theft going forward.
And actually, Peter, just as a final thought, we've talked a bit about how those countries under tariffs might be able to adjust. We should also mention those countries which have reached deals, i.e. Japan and South Korea, for example. How nervous or otherwise should they be about whether those deals will hold? Because it's not like it's unheard of for President Trump to somewhat surprisingly and whimsically change his mind.
Absolutely. Not only might they be nervous, they are nervous right now. For example, Japan has said that the tariff on cars will also be 15%, the same as other products. But the executive order that the White House approved the other day and President Trump signed does not mention that concession to Japan. The tariff had previously been 25%. U.S. said that it would lower that to 15%, apparently, but we don't actually see that on paper yet. And Japan is saying, well, it may take a few weeks. They expect it to happen, but certainly companies like Toyota, Nissan, Honda are nervous, waiting for that to happen.
Peter Landers of the Wall Street Journal and William Yang of the International Crisis Group in Taipei, thank you both for joining us. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. This is The Briefing on Monocle Radio. Media freedoms have been declining in recent years, with governments emboldened to clamp down on independent outlets through direct measures, such as foreign agent laws and imprisonment, as well as more indirect methods, such as costly lawsuits. Monitoring the situation in Europe is Jan Brathu, former Norwegian ambassador, and since the start of this year, the OSCE's representative on freedom of the media. Jan spoke with Monocle's Chris Chermak at a recent conference in Helsinki. He began by describing his own characterization this year of a media landscape which is under pressure.
Indeed, I knew that media was under pressure in very many countries when I agreed to put my name forward for the position. But quite frankly, I wasn't aware the extent of the pressure in almost every part of the OSCE region. We can say the pressures vary. In some parts of the region, it is predominantly economic pressure, financial pressure. In other parts, it's physical pressure. Journalists are being targeted physically, sometimes even killed. So I think we see a degradation of the working environment for journalists across the whole OSCE region. And I have to admit that I didn't really understand how widespread and how serious this is. Take, for example, let's say Western European countries, the prevalence of slap lawsuits. So these are strategic lawsuits against public participation. They're malicious. They are unfounded lawsuits that are simply taken out by business people, by politicians, to prevent media from actually reporting, to drain their resources, not just financial resources, but also time resources. And some media outlets are being subjected to dozens of these types of lawsuits. And it's happening in countries where we wouldn't think that these things would happen. In almost every country of the OSCE, there are SLAPP lawsuits, and I think we can expect more of them in the time to come. That's just one kind of pressure.
Have you been able to identify, I suppose, a general cause when you say that you're surprised by the extent of this? There seems to be a greater license these days to enact these kinds of things, go after SLAPP lawsuits, foreign agent laws, whatever else is out there. There seems to be a greater license, a belief that they can get away with it.
You're right. It's a huge change. It wasn't like this 20, 30 years ago. We're seeing that the principles aren't being held in regard by more and more politicians. And yes, they think they can get away with it, and in many cases they do get away with it. And that encourages others to do the same. I don't think there's one explanation that covers all the cases of pressures against journalists. But for example, you have the statement that media is the enemy. Journalists are the enemy. We never heard talk like that 30, 40 years ago, not to mention 50 years ago. It didn't mean that politicians back then were satisfied with media coverage. Certainly not. But they respected the right of the media to ask probing questions and to dig into stories. They didn't like it. Now there seems to be this conviction among many politicians, East and West, that we don't like the coverage, so we're going to go after the journalist. We want compliant media. We want compliant journalists. We want our story out there. We don't want any difficult questions being asked. Actually, they want propaganda. Now, I think inherently politicians like to have control. East or West, I think all politicians would like to have control. But in the Western countries, certainly, and up until recently, I think in many other countries as well, politicians understood that in a democratic society, free media is a pillar. And without free media, there will not be a democratic society. I'm afraid that I'm coming to the conclusion that the support for democracy, for democratic government, is on the decline. I mean, democracy takes a lot of work. So I think we need to think very seriously about what's actually happening in our societies. Freedom of media, safety of journalists are the proverbial canaries in the coal mine of democracy. If we see pressures against media, we should understand that there's pressure against democracy, and we're in trouble.
I did want to ask you about one more direct threat, I suppose, to journalists, and that is foreign agent laws, because this is something that is happening in a number of countries. It's almost a copy from one government to another, as I've heard it described by some people. What is your view of these? How do you go about trying to tackle them? Because they are spreading to different... They're a more naked version of a slide into authoritarianism, arguably. But how do you go about confronting them, particularly here in Europe?
You're absolutely right. Foreign agent laws are the death knell of independent journalism in many countries. And why is it happening? Well, it's happening because fundamentally the financial sustainability of media all over the OSCE region is under huge attack. Media outlets are struggling to survive financially because the internet and social media-based platforms have basically taken all the advertising revenues. This makes independent media outlets in many countries dependent on grants from foreign donors. Now, ideally, they should be getting grants from their own governments. Norwegian media, Swedish media, Finnish media get grants through government processes. That doesn't happen in a lot of countries. We see that some governments don't want to have independent media. They understand that the way to stop this is to pass foreign agent laws. You're right, it's happening in more and more countries. I am reacting. I'm raising the issues on these foreign agents laws. especially when we hear foreign agents laws being passed in countries that are either members of the EU or aspire to EU membership. And then they complain about media funding that comes from the European Union. And I find that a bit strange, and I guess it raises questions in my mind, at least, as to how serious those countries really are about joining the EU.
Just finally then, if I may, is there something that gives you confidence that media outlets can survive even under some of these challenging circumstances?
Well, you're asking a really tough question now, and I would like to say that I'm optimistic. I guess I have to say that I'm trying to be realistically optimistic. I think there is a market for quality journalism. I think there is a market in every country for quality journalism. I also see in some countries that there is a market for local journalism. I think in Europe there is a tendency that people are ready to pay for local newspapers. They want to know what's happening in their local vicinity. That's the good news. But again, I'm coming back to the question, so how to fund it, how to ensure that we have a media landscape that is conducive to quality journalism. I think that's a big question, and that's one of the topics that my office, the OSCE Representative on Freedom of the Media Office, is working on. And I think it's going to be hugely difficult to reach consensus on that issue. But we have to try. We have to keep standing up for the principles. We have to try to keep finding answers to really difficult questions.
That was Jan Bratu, the OSCE's representative on freedom of the media, speaking to Monocle's Chris Chermak. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. Regular listeners will know, of course, by now, to react to that brief little fanfare as if it were an air raid siren, i.e. to hasten to the nearest sandbagged basement and wait for the all clear. Fernando Augusto Pacheco, welcome to the studio. It is time for the global countdown. What fresh hell awaits us this week?
As always, it's a special one. I always say this, you know that,
well,
right?
Special can mean one of several things, Fernando.
Oh, you do know that we have a global chart these days. It's fairly recent. I think we had that for the last 4 years or so. So sometimes I like to check out what the whole world is
So
listening.
Instead of what awful music is being listened to in one specific jurisdiction, we are looking at what awful music is being listened to by the entire planet.
You can blame the whole world.
Oh, I frequently do.
But at number 5, perhaps, and I'm sorry to be a downer in that sense, is my favorite from the 5 songs.
I was pretty down already, Fernando. It makes no odds to me. This is your favorite.
It is my favorite.
Okay.
It is the K-pop group Blackpink. They are back with new music. Let's have a listen to Jump.
With me, I take you high. That prima donna spice up your life. You know I got the shit that you like. So come on with me, run up, jump. Watch me running up the place. I'm already starting in my girls.
Just give me a few seconds to deal with my nosebleed.
Do you like the
Fernando.
techno beats?
No, I do not like the techno beats, Fernando. I do not care for them in the slightest.
I think they are quite iconic. And you know what? They are a classic K-pop group, because K-pop is not just from Korea in a way, because I genuinely think it became like a global movement, if I may say. And even in the group, for example, Lisa, she was born in Thailand. I mean, she's Thai. We have Rosé, she was born in Auckland. And also Jenny, she lived in New Zealand for a while. So there's even some connections there with your continent.
So
Andrew.
it's spreading, you're suggesting, Fernando, like some sort of respiratory virus.
Yes, next week they're here in London at Wembley Stadium.
Are you going?
I'm not going because I'll be in Brazil.
Otherwise,
Otherwise, it would have been a pleasure.
Whereas I'm not going, Fernando, as I simply cannot be bothered. What is it? What is it? Number 4.
Number 4, we have Justin Bieber with quite a raw track, I have to say. It's called Daisies. It's about his relationship with his wife, Hailey Bieber. But I think it's quite innovative for Justin Bieber. Let's have a listen.
Way you got me all in my head. Think I'd rather you in my bed. Whatever it is, you know I can take it. I'm counting the days, how many days till I can see you again.
So are you suggesting, Fernando, that Justin Bieber is open to trying new things?
Absolutely.
I have some ideas.
Honestly, if I close my eyes, I would imagine this would be the demo track for, because it's not that produced.
I was busier closing my ears. But my suggestions for new things that Justin Bieber could attempt includes, but is not limited to, potholing without a guidebook.
So you don't like his lo-fi vibes?
I do not like his lo-fi vibes. I do not care for those either. I didn't like his hi-fi vibes much either. I may not be the target audience. Who is at number 3?
Number 3 is a fun story. It's basically Netflix sensation animation this summer, which is called K-pop Demon Hunters, which is precisely what the title is talking about. It is a girl group. They are indeed a K-pop group, but they also demon hunters, which I think is quite useful.
So, sorry, are they actually literal demon hunters in real life, and being a K-pop group is like their side hustle?
Absolutely. Or vice versa, if you think about it. What's the most important?
Which actual demons have they successfully hunted and brought to book? Do we know?
It's a great question, because we're going to play actually the demons right now, because it's not the girl group. The demons are in fact a boy band, so they are faking it that they are a boy band, but in fact they are demons. I'm sorry.
I am
spoiler alert.
I am right now, Fernando, hovering somewhere between extremely confused and completely uninterested. Let's hear it.
It's Saja Boys with Soda Pop.
Every drop I drink up, you're my soda pop, my little soda pop. Cool me down, you're so hot. Pull me up, I won't stop. You're my soda pop, my little soda pop.
You don't understand it. This is huge.
Yeah, I'm huge. sure, but it makes Aqua sound like Black Sabbath.
Wow. That quote is great, but honestly, it's worldwide. It's crazy. Everybody cannot stop talking about those demon hunters.
Oh, I can. Watch me go. I am right now going to stop talking about those demon hunters, and will never mention or think of them again. At number 2.
Oh, number 2 is an interesting one, because...
See, Fernando, how bad does it have to be that you sigh despondently?
I know, but I have to be careful, because Alex Warren, I think this song is potentially one of the song of the summers. It's not my choice, by the way.
Okay.
It's the public choice. It's, again, topping the charts everywhere. It's romantic. It's about his wife. His voice tone is quite churchy, if I may say.
Churchy, okay.
And he had a very tragic life. He was homeless for a while. His alcoholic mom kind of said, get out of here, So it was a bit of a tough life. Although it's not my kind of music, I respect.
Okay.
Alex Warren with Ordinary.
See, Fernando, I do not wish to appear unsympathetic to the man's travails, nor grudging of him overcoming them. Well done, etc. I would merely point out that, for one, Roy Orbison had a tragic life and yet made records which didn't suck.
I might have to agree with you, Andrew.
Good Lord.
And this summer has been all about those kind of emotional boys with this slightly churchy voice, but not incredibly powerful, I may say. I'm also being quite bitchy about Alex Warren. I'm really sorry if you're listening to this, Alex Warren. He seems like a nice
Fernando,
fellow, honestly.
He should be apologising to us. At number 1, what do we have? Because at number 1, I have the name of the artist here written down. I don't know if somebody has mistakenly rendered the name.
It's correct.
So it's Hunter, but without an E.
Yes.
Now, Fernando, you know full well what I feel about whimsical renderings of spelling or punctuation.
/X. You didn't say the whole name, so it's Hunter /X.
Well, that wasn't written down.
You know who they
I'm
are?
going to be having a word with somebody about this afterwards. Do I know who they are?
The Demon Hunters. They are indeed the ones who are saving the world against the Saja Boys. And I think we should listen to their track because they're helping out.
Can we not just thank them for helping out and not listen to the track?
It's my job to introduce the track. Hunter X with Golden.
So what among the many things I don't understand, Fernando, is that they have conscription in Korea, which is supposed to stop things like this from happening.
And you know what? This song, of course, we're talking about fictitious groups, but they did hire people very, high level in the K-pop industry to help out in the film's production and the soundtrack as well.
Fernando Augusto Pacheco, thank you as always for the Global Countdown. That is all for this edition of The Briefing, and indeed its presenter's Will to Live. That it was produced by Chris Chermak, our researcher was Henry King, and our studio manager was Elliot Greenfield. The Briefing returns tomorrow at the same time, midday London. I'm Andrew Muller. Thanks for listening.